Welcome to the Create a Life That Is Beautiful podcast, your go-to resource for personal development and coaching. I'm your host, Letitia Ringe, and I'm so glad you're here. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. I'm Letitia Ringe, your coach, and today we're going to be talking about dating. I'm super excited to dive into this topic because, as many of you know, over the past couple of months, I have been out and about dating again. And so I've got some actual real-time lived experience tips to give you. And of course, tips to give you from the many years I've spent supporting people through the dating process and obviously approaching dating in a conscious way. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to remind you all that this Thursday on the 13th of February, I am holding a live masterclass for everyone in our community called the True Love Experience. In this masterclass, you will learn a step-by-step process for creating true love in your life, regardless of what your relationship status is right now. This is really important because we don't find true love. We don't find it in the right partner. We don't find it at some right moment in our life. It is something we all have to intentionally create and cultivate over time. And so you need to understand what goes into creating that love, that deep love that we all desire, a kind of love that gets better, deeper, and higher over time. And that's exactly what you'll be learning in this masterclass. Now, there will be a replay, so make sure you register for the True Love Experience at letitiaringe.com/true love and attend live if you can, or make sure you watch the replay. I wanted to do this right before Valentine's Day because most of us are thinking about love at this time, even those of you who say you're not. Usually when we say, oh, I don't care about Valentine's Day, or it's not something I think about, we really are thinking about it, and that's why we're saying we're not thinking about it. So let's just all admit that this is just a time of year that we can use to remind ourselves to consciously check into this area of our life and pay attention to how we want to show up. And that's what the True Love Experience will help you to do. So make sure you pass it on with your friends, come with your friends, and then discuss after the masterclass with your friends what you've learned and hold each other to a higher standard when it comes to the way you relate in love and your romantic relationships. Once again, register at letitiaringe.com/true love. I also want to remind you that if you'd love support with your love life, whether you're in a relationship right now or single, this is something I can support you with through my Conscious Relationship Coaching Program. I work with individuals and couples through all phases of the relationship cycle, including dating, healing a broken heart, leaving a relationship, deciding whether to leave, improving and supporting a current relationship, and starting a brand new relationship. It doesn't matter what phase of the relationship cycle you're in right now, you can learn to consciously approach your love life at any time. And when you do this, you learn how to build awareness about your own patterns that show up in relationships. You build awareness about your needs and desires, and you learn the skills that support you to create a thriving relationship with your partner that gets better over time. You also learn how to be a better partner to a partner, either now or in the future, which is not something we just naturally are good at. It's something we need to learn how to be while also not self-abandoning and showing up and being a great partner to ourselves too. There is absolute magic that can happen in relationships when we learn how to collaborate together. And these are skills that no one teaches us, which is why we don't know how to do them. But as adults who have the ability to learn these skills and choose what we learn, this is something you can learn when you seek this information. And that's what I'm committed to bringing you through all of my conscious relationship work. And this is something we focus on in my Conscious Relationship Coaching Program, making it bespoke to you so that what you're learning are the skills that you need so that you're becoming aware of what your protective patterns and strategies look like, of what your real needs and desires are are in a relationship and how to communicate them, how to work with a partner, and if you're in a relationship right now, how to work with your unique partner in order to create an amazing relationship for both of you. So if you'd love to know more about that, head to letitiaringe.com/CRCP, as in Conscious Relationship Coaching Program. Make sure you submit an application, and then you and I will get on a call and talk about exactly what's happening for you and how I can support you over 6 months in my Conscious Relationship Coaching Program. Finally, today's episode is best paired with a previous episode I did on this podcast called Conscious Dating. In that episode, I also give you some tips about how to approach dating consciously, and most importantly, what mindset to go into dating with to have the best experience. I'm not going to repeat what I taught in that episode, so make sure you listen to that episode with this episode so that you feel fully supported as you approach dating. I will link that episode in the show notes so that it's easy for you to find. All right, my beautiful friends, without further ado, let's dive in. Welcome to Relate Higher, a podcast dedicated to providing the leading standard in conscious higher relating and to teaching you a conscious framework for all of your relationships. This is your go-to resource for developing meaningful, conscious relationships across your life. I'm your host, award-winning relationship coach and consultant and former family lawyer, Letitia Ringe. I'm so glad you're here. All right, my beautiful friends, I am super excited to dive into approaching dating consciously. Now, I have a big long list here. I think I've got 20 points. I'm not sure if I'm going to get through all of these in today's episode, so I'm just going to go through the list and go as far as feels comfortable. But the reason I have so many tips here is because, as I mentioned at the top of this episode, I myself have personally been dating over the last few months after having almost a year off from dating and being consciously single, spending time with myself, preparing for dating and for partnership again, so that I am doing the conscious thing to make sure that I'm in a good place, a safe place, a ready place to be dating other people. I think that this is something we all should take a little bit of time and care to make sure we do before we enter into dating. So with all of that said, I have observed many things throughout my experiences dating that show me why people are struggling so much right now when it comes to creating long-term thriving partnerships together. It all starts in the dating phase. And the place that I've been dating primarily is in London right now, which is a huge city. And I feel like the problems that I see in London are really just an exaggerated version of the problems that are happening across our modern world when it comes to dating. So I want to share with you what I've noticed and better ways to approach dating and to move through the dating process if you are someone who is looking to create a long-term relationship with another person. I also want to mention that the recommendations I have are really for those of you who want to build a monogamous relationship. Now, this doesn't mean that you can't apply this to an open relationship or a polyamorous relationship or any other title you use in terms of ethical non-monogamy. But the way that I think about dating and the conversations I mostly have are with people who want to have a monogamous relationship. Now, that could be a monogamous relationship for the duration of the relationship you're creating, or for some people, they want to have a monogamous relationship to begin, and then they want to be open to exploring other forms of ethical non-monogamy, possibly in the future, but they recognize that in order to explore that in a conscious and powerful way, they want to have a really strong foundation of monogamy first. So if that's you want a monogamous relationship either forever or at least for the beginning, these tips will really support you. And if you fall outside of that, you will still probably get some value, but please know the perspective that I'm thinking about and that I'm speaking to is really for those of you who are prioritizing monogamy. Okay, my first tip for you is to give dating a container. If you are dating anyone, make sure you are really clear about that with one another. We are dating each other right now. When I say dating, I don't mean that you've committed to a relationship with one another, but you need to be clear that what you're exploring is a romantic connection with one another. When you're upfront about that this is your intention, this allows both you and the other person to feel safe to explore that connection. What I've noticed, particularly out in the city scene, is that a lot of people ask people out. This is obviously when it's in person rather than on a dating app. They ask each other out, but they don't specify what they're asking them out to. Is this a date or is this just a getting to know each other, a friend catch up? Like, what are your intentions? And we do this because we want to play it cool. We want to be casual. We think if we don't specify what our intentions are by asking the other person out, then that makes it less awkward. But what I've observed, and through many conversations I've had with other people, including my own experience of this, is when a person asks you out and they don't specify whether this is a date, whether they have romantic intentions, whether they want to get to know you on a romantic basis, then it can cause a lot of insecurity in you because you do not know what you're saying yes to. And it's important to give one's consent that you know what you're saying yes to. So in my opinion, if you are the person asking someone out, you should be clear. I would like to take you on a date, or I would love to explore a romantic connection with you and get to know you better. When you do that, you're then giving the other person the ability to appropriately consent to what you're asking. If a person asks you out and they do not give that degree of specificity, there is no problem with you asking them, are you asking me on a date or are you asking me to catch up as a friend? It's really important that I know this so that I know what I'm saying yes to. If they then say, oh, I just want to get to know you as a friend, you then know you're not getting to know them romantically. You're saying yes to catching up as a friend. So you can understand and categorize in your head, compartmentalize even, this is a person who wants to get to know me as a friend only. Now, obviously, things can develop from there. And if they do, I recommend you make sure you have a conversation to say, now I want to get to know you romantically. Okay. But if you have a romantic interest when the person is asking you out or you're asking them out and you're not specifying that, it's better that you openly communicate that, because otherwise feelings get involved and you're both on two different pages, and that's where there is miscommunication and it can lead to hurt between you two. So to preserve your feelings, to preserve the relationship that you create together, whether it's friendship or romantic, it's better that you practice radical honesty and clear conscious communication, and you are upfront about what your intentions are. If they say, no, I just want to get to know you as a friend, but you really want to get to know them romantically, it is better that you either say no to catching up with them as a friend, and you might want to explain why, or you just simply tell them, hey, I actually am more interested in exploring a romantic connection with you. So if you're not open to that, then I'd rather not explore a friendship here, right? Because otherwise what will happen is you're going to go into that friend catch up wanting to explore something more. The other person doesn't. And when they don't change their mind, you're going to feel upset that they haven't liked you more, right? So it's better just to be upfront about it right from the beginning. You both know what page you're on, and then you're actually able to appropriately consent. This is really, really important. Now, we don't do this because we don't want to be vulnerable. We don't want to get rejected. But what happens is you end up getting rejected anyway, and it hurts way more than if you just pull the Band-Aid off and allow yourself to face a small rejection earlier on. So giving dating a container enables both of you to feel safe in what you're consenting to and what you're doing. What this also does is set the tone for the future of your dating process together. Because if at any point either of you wants to cease dating and decides that this is no longer a fit, it means that you want to have a conversation then to change the nature of your interactions appropriately, right? So if you can be really clear in the beginning, we're stepping into a container to date one another, and you might even want to discuss the rules around that depending on your relationship together. For instance, if you've been friends and now you want to date, it's probably appropriate that you agree that you're not dating anyone else as you explore dating one another. If you then decide that you no longer want to date each other, it's best that you say, hey, I don't feel like this is a romantic connection for me. I want to just be friends, or I no longer want to continue dating. And you give them the information they need to understand the changing nature of your dynamic and the relationship. This is just respectful to yourself and the other person so that they can appropriately support themselves with that changing evolution of your relationship together. What creates problems is when we say nothing and we just say, oh, I'm just not ready for a relationship, which a lot of men say once they really just decide that you're not the person that they want to pursue a relationship with. And then that can be really confusing for you because you think, well, why were you dating me? Really, all they need to say is, I don't think that this is a fit. It doesn't feel like a fit for me. I no longer want to date you. Yes, that's going to hurt, but what will hurt more is when you don't communicate that upfront and then one of you is left in confusion and then the connection still remains open between you two and there's all of this uncertain energy around it. Instead, be clear. Give dating a container and close the container when it needs to be closed. Another way that you close the container is when you enter into a relationship together, or perhaps the rules around the container change. Maybe you start dating each other and then you decide you want to exclusively date each other. So you're not dating anyone else. And then perhaps you want to decide to enter into a relationship together. So the changing nature of the rules around the container that you both are agreeing to should be discussed up front to create safety. And this is honestly just the conscious thing to do. So if you think that you're a conscious person and you're not willing to have these conversations, it is really important that you have a look at that, because that is not conscious behavior. That is playing games in order to avoid being vulnerable. That's not cool. And I know that the majority of you who listen to this episode are people who are on the path of personal development and coaching. You might even work as a coach or in the personal development industry. And so the way that you show up through the dating process really needs to be intentional, and you need to meet higher standards, expect higher from yourself. This will often require you to lead the process in some ways. Don't match energy, right? That's going to lead you to relating lower. Instead, set standards. Set your standards of how you want to show up, and show up to those standards no matter what the other person is doing. This is how we relate higher, and this is how we improve our dating culture. And it's you listening to this episode right now who has the potential to do this. Okay, second tip is to take a slower and more structured approach to dating. Now, I get it. My dream was to just meet someone because I'll just know. I've always just known when I've met someone that they were going to be my partner. I'm highly intuitive. And so I would just jump head first into the connection, be spontaneous, let it flow. If it was quick, if it was slow, whatever it needed to be, I would just go at that speed. That is really what I thought I wanted when it came to the dating process. What I've learned through my more recent experiences of dating is that does not give either of you enough time to process how you're feeling, to get to know each other, to decide whether you're actually compatible rather than there just being connection and chemistry. And it also doesn't allow feelings to increase, right? For you to see, actually, I am becoming more fond of this person. My feelings are growing. So I now recommend that you take a slower and more structured approach to dating that allows this to happen over time. time rather than rushing in and then realizing actually this person isn't so compatible with me. But because I've rushed in and spent all this time and now our time together has become a habit, even an addiction, even possibly feeling some emotion that you want to experience, I've now decided that this person is more compatible for me than they actually are, and now I'm bonded to them. Especially if you're being physically intimate with the person, usually you start to bond with each other. And so you might have connection, chemistry, and physical intimacy, but when you look at the really important things in terms of compatibility, you realize that there is just not a match here. And yet you feel like, hey, I'm willing to overlook those things because I am now attached to this person. So these are things that you can only know over time because you can't possibly find out all of the details about the person and especially about their character, which is what matters more than many of the details and circumstances you are actually looking at when you go into asking questions about them. You actually just need to get to know a person over time. So the way that I look at it is the dating process can take 6 months, right, with one person. That is fine. That is a good amount of time to get to know a person. Going slow allows you to see over time, are you still interested after 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months? It allows you time to actually just to get to know each other and have fun together, but then also to find out whether they're truly compatible with you on the areas that matter. It also gives you time to notice, do our feelings keep growing for each other? It allows you to know whether you're still actually interested in them as a person. And it stops you from rushing in to avoid an emotion that you don't want to feel or to feel an emotion that you want to feel. So what happens is you start to use this person to avoid an emotion or to feel an emotion, which can lead to choosing someone who is just not compatible with the life that you actually want to live. And that can create big problems in the future. Or maybe they don't have the character traits that show you they will be a great partner, or even that they're ready for the kind of relationship and commitment that you desire. It's really, really easy to lie to yourself throughout the dating process when you have connection and chemistry with someone. You might be lying to yourself and they might be lying to themselves because it feels good to have someone. You might be avoiding feeling lonely, and so it feels good to have this connection. But the issue is you need to be okay with feeling lonely so that you're not entering into relationship and dating people from a place that wants to avoid loneliness. That leads to really bad decisions, and especially when it comes to picking partners. Now, what a slower, structured approach to dating could look like, and what I recommend is something like this. You commit to dating each other over 6 months. Now, in that time, you can, of course, say you want the dating process to be an exclusive process where you're just dating each other. Typically, I like to date people exclusively, one person at a time. A lot of dating coaches don't recommend this, especially for women, because we tend to put all of our focus on a person and then ultimately get attached to them because we're only focused on one person. And then when you ultimately decide that they're not compatible, you have to then move on from that connection and then start the whole process again. So that might be you, and in which case you might like to date multiple people at once. For me personally, I can only do that in very, very early stage dating, but as soon as I am interested in someone and want to explore it, probably beyond date 4, I only want to date one person at a time because that is just my personality. I feel bad dating other people, and I just don't have the energetic capacity to hold multiple people. So for me, once I'm at about date 4, I'm going to want to close off the dating container and make it exclusive. And I'm going to express that to my dating partner. And I'm also going to want to have that commitment from them too for the rest of the dating process together. So I will be upfront about that expectation, about that need. And if they're able to meet me, then we can continue the dating process together. Now, I would personally, in the first month, meet a person once a week. I will not meet them more than that, because what will happen is if we start meeting each other even twice a week or more than that, obviously, I'm going to start getting attached to them and getting used to speaking to them and meeting with them all the time. But I don't know enough about them at this point. So I don't want to start growing attached to them. I want to keep enough distance so that I can gradually get to know the person. I can see that we're still interested in each other after a month or even after a week of being apart. I can see that I still have my own life, they still have their life. And so we're not letting everything go just because we've got connection and chemistry, right? So this is really helpful so that I get to know the person more. Now, by the end of that month, I should have had about 4 dates. So I'm going to know personally for me whether I want to now close off my dating container to date that person exclusively. That is not a long amount of time, but for some reason, we tend to think, oh, if I only see them once a week or 4 dates, that seems like a long amount of time. But really, you still know very little about each other. So in the second month, I might then move to seeing them twice a week. This is going to then test how is it when we see each other more regularly and have each other more regularly in our lives. I'm going to want to see them more often than that, most likely. But I'm going to slow it down and keep it structured. And I'm going to wait probably until about month 3 before I start increasing that. So the idea is gradually over the 6 months, you start increasing the amount of time, but you're giving each other enough time to feel, how does it feel when we increase the amount of contact between us, the amount of time spent with one another? As for how you communicate between your dates, that's up to you. You can tell each other what you expect, or you can show each other what your standard is by actually leading and modeling with that standard. So I prefer this slower structured approach to dating because I find that if I dive in head first, I end up overlooking the person's lack of compatibility and overvaluing connection and chemistry. I get emotionally bonded and physically attached to the person, and it becomes really painful, even if it's only been a couple of weeks, once I decide, okay, this person isn't compatible and we need to close the dating container. So to avoid my own feelings getting hurt and also to avoid my dating partner's feelings from getting hurt, it is better that we're slower in the beginning so that we can get to know each other, so that we can find out more about one another, so that we can test compatibility, so that we can get to know character traits, so that we can understand whether our feelings are actually growing over time. And it just means that things aren't as painful if we decide not to move forward. Now, it also means that if we do decide to move forward, we have now prolonged the whole process, making it juicier, allowing us to be present throughout the process, allowing us to enjoy the process of dating without needing to rush ahead. Because remember, everyone, if you decide to be in a committed long-term relationship together, you will never have this experience of dating each other again. There will never be that first month where you just saw each other once a week and you were so excited to see each other again, or the second month where you were seeing each other twice a week and you really wanted to see each other all the time, but you slowed down and just enjoyed. If you end up being in a relationship together, you will live with each other. You'll see each other all the time. You will have less moments to miss each other. So enjoy the dating process and make it slower to enjoy it. It's like some people want to rush into the wedding and the marriage and the children and the next. There's always the next thing. And that is your ego searching for more, searching for a feeling. But if you can enjoy what is for what it is, it actually leads you to experiencing more joy throughout the relationship, really appreciating all of the moments, all of the building blocks, and only moving to that next experience once you're truly ready for a new experience. If you always think you're going to feel better in the next experience, then you're missing where the goodness actually resides, which is in the present moment. So a slower and more structured dating approach is something I highly recommend. Obviously, every interaction with a person is its own unique pace, and you'll be able to collaborate with the person and make it your own. But as a general guide, I recommend this slower structured dating approach for that first 6 months so that you have enough time to get to know each other and make decisions from a rational place rather than moving forward on connection and chemistry and overlooking your actual compatibility with each other. Okay, my third tip is about insecurity. Now, I know we're all totally obsessed with attachment styles at the moment. There is so much information and people talking about attachment styles. It's now part of the common vernacular. Everybody seems to know their attachment style and self-identifies. Now, I want to give a slightly different perspective on insecurity in today's episode. So usually when we talk about attachment styles, in summary, we're talking about, are you a secure attachment style or are you an insecure attachment style, which is commonly known as anxious, avoidant, or disorganized attachment. So when we talk about any of those three attachment styles, we're talking about insecurity. Now, the way that we talk about attachment styles is where we take responsibility for our attachment style. So if we're feeling insecure, it is a result of our attachment style. Now, I want to recommend that we don't take such a black and white approach to the topic of insecurity, because first things first, your attachment style can be different with different people and also at different phases of the relationship cycle. I know for me, I've been secure, I've been anxious, I've been disorganized, I've been avoidant with different people and at different parts of the relationship cycle and at different moments in my life. And so if I think that my insecurity just means that I need to self-soothe, which I may need to do, I might actually then ignore signals from my body that are showing me something is not right or safe about this person in front of me. So I like to see that insecurity that might be coming from an attachment wound as something that usually is happening more inside your head. So maybe what you're wanting is validation, you're wanting to rush in, you're wanting to lock them down, and you have a lot of stories happening in your head that are creating that insecurity. Now, self-soothing can happen on a mental level, and in that circumstance, it can also happen on a physical level where you're breathing and regulating your system. And then there is insecurity that is happening only in the body. And you are getting strong signals. This person isn't right. Something doesn't feel right about them. I don't feel comfortable around them. I don't feel safe. This just isn't right. And it can be a really strong physical reaction in the body. Now, of course, this could come from an attachment style. It could come from an insecurity that is also coming from your mind. But in my experience, when I have felt insecurity in my body with a person that is unexplained and I don't have a lot of mental stories around that, it is usually something from my body's intelligence telling me that this insecurity is real and something to pay attention to. So I get really concerned when we demonize the feeling of insecurity, that we are actually then ignoring our body's intelligence that is telling us someone is not safe. I remember there was this one guy that I dated. We had an amazing date, great connection, great chemistry. And at the end of the date, I felt in my entire body this incredibly strong visceral experience that something wasn't right about this person. Now, at the same time, that felt really exciting, but it also made me feel incredibly anxious and insecure. And as I then went on to explore that connection, I realized that was my body telling me in that moment that something wasn't right. And it wasn't. It wasn't that there was anything terribly bad about the person or that I was actually unsafe, but it was my body telling me this isn't right for you. Now, because I've had experiences in healthy, secure, long-term relationship, I know that when you're with someone that is truly right for you and a good partner, what you will feel is secure in your body. Now, you may still have that attachment style happening of insecurity, and then you've got stories in your head and you need to self-soothe and you need to slow yourself down or you need to lean in. But what you're not experiencing is this very strong visceral signal in your body telling you that something is wrong. Things should be easy, comfortable, and secure with the right person. And I remember the first time I had this experience, this was when I met my 10-year partner. Now, while during the dating process, I still had some anxiety coming up, it was just in my head, but it felt right in my body the whole time. I felt relaxed. I felt at ease. It all just flowed. It was such a beautiful experience. And I had some anxiety, but it wasn't the kind of insecurity I'm talking about here that's happening in my body as a warning. So because I've experienced that is very powerful. And I remember thinking to myself at the time, this is how a relationship's meant to be. And so when I would talk to my friends about what a relationship should feel like, I would explain that moment that I'd never felt that way with prior partners, but I felt that way with this partner. And that's how I knew it was right. And that's how I knew and could understand when people told me, when it's the right person, you're not going to have this drama and chaos around you. And they were right. And so now, many years later, as I'm back out dating, when I'm noticing that insecurity, that someone is making me feel insecure, like not that they're intentionally doing that, but I feel insecure around them really strongly in my body, I know that this isn't right. Something is off. Either we're not a match or they're not ready or I'm not ready. Something is very, very off, and this is not something to move forward with. So I would say do not ignore physical insecurity in your body or anxiety. If you're feeling there's a lot of drama or chaos, like that is just a sign that this is not right between you. And to trust that while also self-soothing any mental insecurity that comes up throughout the process that leads you to wanting to rush or maybe to lean back, and which simply requires some simple self-soothing from you. Okay, next point is if someone says any of these phrases, I'm worried that I'll hurt you, I'm not sure that I'm ready for a relationship, or I'm not ready for commitment, listen to them. Don't make excuses for them. Don't try to convince them. Don't try to convince yourself that you can just, be with them for the interim. Put clear boundaries in place. Your only job throughout the dating process, and please listen to this, your only job throughout the dating process is to say no to anyone who is not a fit on the important non-negotiable stuff. Like, for instance, if you want a monogamous relationship, and you are dating someone who does not want a monogamous relationship, that is a non-negotiable for you. You must be with someone who wants monogamy. Do not entertain anyone who wants an open or polyamorous relationship if you know that you want monogamy. I see this happen so many times. I've had so many friends experience this. I've had clients experience this because they do not want to be alone, because they just believe that there's no one out there who actually wants monogamous relationships because all the people they've been meeting have been wanting open or polyamorous relationships. They then start to create this idea that there just aren't people out there who want the same things as them. It's not true. There are many, many people and more people who want monogamous relationships than people who want open or polyamorous relationships. There is also, in my own experience and also in the research, so much more evidence of successful, satisfying monogamous relationships than people in polyamorous or open relationships. Now, of course, this could change as we go on and there's more research and more people doing it, but typically I have not seen many examples. I have one example only in my entire life experience and all the conversations I have around relationships of only one couple that I know of who successfully is satisfied in a open relationship. And I have to say that I've only spoken to the person in that relationship who wanted to have the open relationship. So I do not know what the other person's opinion on that is. So for me, I have a lot of caution when I look at the conversation happening around polyamory and open relationship. I see a lot of people who are really afraid of commitment or who just lack the relationship skills to have the intimacy and depth that they desire. And then they bring that same lack of skills into multiple relationships. And while it might satisfy them for a little bit, I don't see it satisfying them over the long term. And I've seen people who are in monogamous relationships then explore polyamory or open relating, and that leading to the end of their relationship together because it led to a big lack of distrust between the two people in the relationship. So what I'm saying is it is important to understand what you want in a relationship. If you want to have a monogamous relationship, then your only job is to say no to anyone who proposes anything different to that. And if you tell yourself, okay, I'm just going to date this person while I'm waiting for the person who wants to meet me in monogamy, you are lying to yourself. Be honest with yourself. If what you really want is a monogamous relationship and you've got a person in front of you who doesn't want monogamy, then do you think your natural tendency to be monogamous is going to be any different with this person in front of you? Probably not. Your attention is fully going to go to them. You're going to close off your availability to other people. And if you do meet someone who is the one or a better fit for you who also wants monogamy, they are going to be able to energetically feel and sense, or you might even tell them that you're involved with someone else. And do you think that's going to be attractive to them? I know for me that if someone is involved with another person, that is an instant turn off for me. It shows a lack of constraint, a lack of ability to be on their own, and frankly, a lack of healthy masculine energy, which is something that I really desire in a partner. Now, because I am so clear on my standard for monogamy, not that monogamy means it's a better standard than polyamory or an open relationship, it's just my standard. And because I am so clear that I will not entertain anything other than a monogamous partner, and because I understand that there are many people who also want monogamous relationships out there, I have never, ever, ever had a problem where I've attracted someone who wanted polyamory or an open relationship. Like that has not come up on my path. It's just never been a problem. And yet I see so many of my friends around me where this comes up time and time again. And what it tells me is that part of them is doubting their standard, is not holding their standard, and or does not believe that there are people out there who can meet them. And so the universe keeps sending them these people to say no to. And the quicker you say no to them, the quicker you allow your space to be open for those people who can meet you. So if you're entertaining anything, and it doesn't need to be only this relationship structure, if you have a non-negotiable and you are entertaining something that is not in alignment with your non-negotiable, then what this is just delaying you from being in the relationship that you desire. Your only job is to say no to anyone who does not fit your important stuff. So as soon as you get to a place in your getting to know each other where you realize something is not compatible on one of the important things that are non-negotiable to you, you have to say no to that person. You got to get out of there as soon as possible. And if you take the structured dating approach that I recommend, you won't have as much invested in that person by the time you find out these important things, because you want to find these out early on. Now, what leads us to saying yes to people who are not a fit on the important stuff is scarcity. We think that, oh, this is the only person I have a connection and chemistry with, and there's going to be no one else like them, and they're really good in all of these other ways, but they just don't have this one really important thing to me that I know that I really won't be happy with over the long term. Yes, there is someone out there who can meet you on the important stuff. So this is where self-abandonment happens and where lying happens, where we're not being radically honest with ourselves first or with our partner. It's so important during the dating process and getting to know one another that you are practicing radical honesty and vulnerability. You have to be honest, because you withholding that from them, whatever the non-negotiable is that's really important to you, means that they don't get to consent to what they think they're consenting to. And if you decide, oh, it's okay, I'll put up with it, I'll, entertain something different, even though I know that this is really important for me and it's actually probably come up in past relationships, which is why I know it's really important for me. If you do that, you are not being honest with yourself, you're not being honest with them, and then they can't really consent to the relationship. So it's not conscious behavior, and you need to be honest with yourself in order to be honest with others and in order to have true consent through the dating process and in a relationship. So remember, slow things down. That's going to help. Make sure you ask the important questions early on to do with your non-negotiables. And this brings me to my next point. Make sure you know what your non-negotiables are. Now, this is a difficult one, and this is why when I work with my clients in my conscious relationship coaching program, many of the people I work with come in with a list of what they want in terms of the partner that they want to attract. And then as we move through the process I take them through, we find out that actually that list of non-negotiables is quite different to the original list they came in. Now, why does this happen? Well, there are several reasons. The first is often what we're wanting is coming from a place where we're not actually satisfied within ourselves. So we look to certain qualities or circumstances in another person in order to fill that hole within ourselves. When I work with my clients, I'm helping them not only to create the relationship they desire and position themselves for that, and part of that is actually filling themselves up with what they want first, so that whatever they're wanting and desiring within the relationship is something that, first of all, they're embodying within themselves and also is actually coming from a true desire rather than from an unmet need within themselves. So usually the list of what they want and desire and those non-negotiables actually becomes quite different throughout the journey of working together. So it's really, really important that you can understand what you actually deeply, truly want and need, and then also that you're able to distinguish what the priorities are. So the non-negotiables are those things that are just deal breakers. You can't live without these things. There must be compatibility on these things. Then there might be other things that you desire in a partner that actually, through the process of getting to know that person or through the process of just getting to know yourself or over time, you discover that these things just aren't as important as you thought they were, or there's things that are more important than you thought that they were. Now, this is normal because we're all human beings. We're growing and evolving. What we learn about ourselves is going to change. What we need and want is going to change. So it makes it really hard when you're creating a list and half of that list could be something that actually changes. This is why learning what are the priorities, what are the non-negotiables, and where you can be more open is really, really important. So I did this funny video on Instagram about, do you want to come on a date with me? And then I was just basically interviewing the person. I had like 30 different questions I was asking them, and they were all the questions that we tend to ask each other. But probably 90% of that list didn't even matter. None of it matters. If a person fell outside of that, but they had the actual non-negotiables that I need in a partner, then all of those other things wouldn't matter. You need to know what those non-negotiables are. And for most of you, it will take some time really looking at what your protective patterns are, learning how to transmute them, and also learning how to build that relationship with yourself first in order to know what you truly do want and need in a relationship. And that's something that I support you with in my conscious relationship coaching program. Now, on this same topic of what we're looking for in a partner, I want to also encourage you that you focus more on the qualities of the person that show their character and their values rather than their circumstances. So we all know the joke that a lot of women are looking for someone who's over 6 foot, who has a trust fund and has blue eyes. It's like a funny thing that goes around like a meme. None of those things are important, okay? What matters more, what tells you whether a partner is going to be a good partner, it's going to be a great person to collaborate with, to share your life with, are going to be character traits more like kindness, trustworthiness, honesty, loyalty, consistency, good communication, consideration, curious, generosity, integrity, versus how much money they make, which is a changing circumstance that could change at any time, versus even what their job is, versus obviously their height and their weight. You want to have a look instead at character traits, and I would say also values. You want to make sure obviously your values are aligned, what you prioritize is aligned, and you don't need to have the exact same values, but where it matters, you will want to have similar values that are in harmony with one another. So it's really important to understand what those character traits are so that you can look for them, and also to understand what your values are so that you can learn what their values are and figure out whether those values are in alignment with each other. Now, at the same time, it's really important to be open to those things that you think you want that actually may not be as important. Or maybe there's something that you actually would be a really great fit for, but you don't even know it yet. There are so many examples of people who seem to have really opposite lives or even qualities, and yet they are great partners with one another. So understanding what that is for you is tricky until you're in that dynamic with that person. So I think that there are 3 different areas you should look at and know. And if you choose a partner who's in alignment with these 3 areas, it will make the experience of a relationship much easier. But I also think that these are not non-negotiables. And if you and the other person are willing to accept each other's differences in these areas, then you can still create compatibility with each other. So I'll tell you what they are. I mentioned these in a video I recently did on Instagram at Letitia Ringe. The video was called, "Is There a Right Person for You?" And in that, I mentioned that I don't think that there is a right person, that we can actually be compatible with most people if we accept our differences. But if we want an easier experience of relationship, then I'd look at these 3 qualities. The first is you want to have a look at how you actually live your life, like what you do with your days, and is the person compatible with that? Like, do you actually want to do similar things, right? That's going to be helpful because you're actually going to have someone who wants to share the life you're actually living with you. Secondly, you want to know that you're compatible in terms of your outlook on life. So if you take an abundance mindset, if you love to grow and you love to challenge yourself and you believe in generosity and kindness, but your partner has values or an outlook on life that is very different to that, you're just constantly going to butt heads. So it would be easier to choose someone who also has that similar outlook and perspective on life. Thirdly, if there are very specific experiences you want for the future, it would be really helpful if your partner is also in alignment with those. For instance, if you want kids and they don't want kids, that's probably going to be an issue. So if there are details that you know you want for your future, it's best to talk about those and choose someone who is in alignment with those, unless you both can truly accept your differences and you'd be happy to live a life where you basically compromise on that. Either you don't have the thing that you want, or you decide to support your partner with the thing that they want, or you decide to come up with some other compromise. Like, this is life anyway. We're going to have to compromise on things. You just have to decide whether those things that you're not in alignment with are actually things you're willing to compromise on or to support or to give up altogether. Like, something I spend a lot of time thinking about is for all the people out there who know that they want children, if they met a partner who they absolutely love, like they just have the most amazing relationship with, and then they try to have children together and then they can't have children together, would they get rid of their partner so that they could have children with someone else who wants children, is able to give them children? I think in a lot of circumstances, people choose to stay together. And in other circumstances, people do decide that is really important and they decide to leave and find a partner who is able to give them those children. These are good things to think about and to consider because they show you what your priorities really are. For example, for me, I've always been undecided as to whether I want to have children, but I wanted to choose a partner who at least could give me the option of having children if that's something I decide that I want in the future. But I realized if I met someone who I really, really loved and could create a great relationship with and loved as a partner and we were compatible in all of those senses, but we decided not to have children and they didn't want children or they couldn't give me children for some reason, I would never leave them. I would choose the relationship over that particular scenario in the future because for me, my desire for the relationship is much stronger than my desire for the children. And I've always known since I was a kid that if I didn't have my own kids, I could have kids in other ways and that was something that might be on my path. So that shows me my priorities, right? Which means that I can make different decisions around partners than other people who know that they really want children and that's a high priority. So I think that this is important for us all to think about and to realize because sometimes we are saying no to people when actually if we could create a great relationship with them, the things that we think are not compatible actually wouldn't matter as much as we think. And then there's the reverse where actually they would matter more than we think. So it's important to be aware of that as best as we can and also to understand that through the process of living our lives, the things we think we want or actually want can also change. And that's just part of life. Okay, another tip for you all is if you have people in your life who are in what I call the gray zone, which is these are people who you're not actively romantically pursuing, but they're also not just friends. So they're people who are like in between in an undefined category. You're not really sure. I would say no to pursuing anything with them while you are dating. Only because they tend to clog your space. And what I mean by that is you will probably revert to meeting up with them as a way to validate yourself and to not feel so alone and to get something from them that feels like you're dating, even though it's not really a fit. And that's why they're in the gray zone. So in order to get your energy back, in order to focus your attention and be available for the right people, I recommend that you just don't pursue anything with those people while you're dating. It doesn't mean that they can't be friends in the future. It doesn't mean that you can't hang out again in the future. But while you're in the process of dating, these people can just become a distraction. So I would limit interaction with those people. Now, I also want to say a word on this. I feel like for some of us, we think, hey, like if I'm not in a relationship and I haven't met someone, then I should just be able to casually date other people and have, intimate relationships, etc. with others. And I think you can do whatever you want. I have no problem with that. I always thought, like Samantha from Sex and the City was the coolest. And, I've had my time in my life where I've really tried that. But from my own experience and seeing so many other people in my life, people of both genders, and those who also don't identify with gender, I also see a lot of people getting distracted and getting hurt by moving forward on casual relationships when what they really want is a long-term committed relationship with a partner. I think that we only have so much capacity to handle so many people in our life. And there's kind of a light that goes on when you're available and a light that goes off when you're not available. So when you're over here distracted with someone else, being intimate with them, yes, that can be fun and it can give you a kick at the time and boost your confidence for a little bit. It can also distract you and turn your light off from the kind of people that you want to actually attract. And like I mentioned before, personally for me, if I know someone that I'm dating has been having intimate relations with someone else, and especially very recently, for me, that's a turn off because for me, it doesn't make me feel safe in that they're actually truly wanting and ready for the kind of committed relationship that I want. So just be aware of the signal that can send from you to the kind of people that you want to attract as well. And also what your expectations would be for the people that you are dating too. Because often we're just kind of playing games. We don't want to look too vulnerable. So we go with people in the gray zone and it's really just coming from a place of insecurity. So really meet your own standard here, decide what it is and lead and model that behavior. Okay, I'm going to give you just one more tip, even though I have many others, but we're running out of time. And this final tip is this. Use the dating process with the intention of getting to know the other person, okay? Not with the intention of creating a relationship with them. That is when things get weird. And it's also when you start overlooking very key facts that tell you whether the person is actually a good person to create a relationship with. The only thing that you need to get from the dating phase is knowing the other person. This means it also sets you up to feel really successful because through the dating process, if your only goal is to get to know the other person rather than to be in a relationship with them, you have control over getting to know them, even if they decide to end the dating process. Now you know them, right? You know that they don't want what you're offering. You know each other. Okay, so you've won. Yay. But if you make the goal of dating creating a relationship, you're likely to try to manipulate one another into moving into a relationship, and that leads to ignoring getting to know each other properly. So slow things down, and also remember that as you're dating, it's not an interview and it's not a performance. Radical honesty and vulnerability. You want them to know you. You want them to see you. And that requires you to be honest about who you are and what you want. You can also be honest in your uncertainty about something that you want and whether they actually might be a fit. So throw in a couple of questions every time you meet each other, but focus on enjoying time with each other, having fun, developing a connection, and being present with what is so that you can actually get to know and experience each other. And then you throw in a couple of questions. Usually in the beginning, you'd focus with those areas of non-negotiables that you really need to know about in order to move forward. And then as you move throughout the dating process, you can start to talk about the other things. You can get an idea of their character traits. You can get an idea of their values. You can talk about what they want for the future. You can talk about how they live their life now. And you can also talk about what their perspective is on life. And so over time, you're getting all of this information about each other, but you're also simply being present and enjoying the process and the journey, which allows for spontaneous happenings. You get to know each other in deeper ways that simply won't come through an interview, right? And it definitely won't come through a performance. I know on some dates, I can go into this performance mode where I realize, hang on, it's like I feel that I need to show up in a certain way. And so even just in the way I'm holding my body, and that's not really me. Like I'm not going to show up in this way in my natural state. So I have to remind myself, okay, take a breath. It's not a performance. You're not trying to get anything from them. You're just getting to know each other. And so that allows me to relax. It allows me to soften. And then it allows me to actually be present and enjoy spending time with each other and getting to know each other. It also means if it doesn't end in progressing as dating partners, that you've still enjoyed connecting with someone. Like it's a beautiful opportunity going on a date with someone because you get to connect in a way that you don't typically get to connect with other people outside of dates. So these are meaningful. These are beautiful interactions no matter what happens between you. So respect each other, respect the time that you spend with each other, have fun, enjoy it. And also remember, this might be the last time you date someone again. So enjoy the journey, don't rush it, and most of all, remember to have fun. Okay, my beautiful friends, they are my tips for dating. I hope you enjoyed this. I'd love to hear your feedback. I know that we all have very strong opinions about dating. And so if you want to share anything that resonated with you, any tips that you have for dating, any areas of difference in terms of what I've mentioned, I'd love to hear from you. Come and send me a message over on Instagram at Letitia Ringe. And also, I think it's really good for us all to keep this conversation going because dating culture is at a turning point, I believe, right now. People are really wanting things to be more meaningful, more conscious, more intentional. There are changes that are being desired. And the more we talk about what we feel those changes could be or look like, the better we're able to lead us all into a better experience of dating. And I really think that we need to think more positively about dating. It should be a beautiful moment in one's life. It's not something to be embarrassed or ashamed about, and it's not something to get over with as quickly as possible. We want to enjoy the dating process and really enjoy the opportunity to get to know people in this beautiful, intimate way. All right, final reminder to register for the True Love Experience. This is a 75-minute masterclass I'll be running live on the 13th of February, the day before Valentine's Day. It's for you whether you're single or in a relationship. I'm teaching you the step-by-step process to follow to create true love in your life rather than find it, which is what keeps putting the kind of love you want to experience out of your grasp. So join me live or watch the replay, and you can register at letitiaringe.com/true love. And once again, please share the masterclass with your friends so that you have people to discuss what you learn in the masterclass, and so that we can all raise our standards when it comes to the way we relate with each other in love and romantic partnership. And finally, if you would love coaching support as you look at your love life and your experience of romantic relationships, whether you're dating, whether you're healing a broken heart, whether you're uncoupling, deciding whether to leave a relationship, starting a new relationship, or supporting and improving an existing relationship, I invite you to check out my Conscious Relationship Coaching Program. You and I will work together privately over 6 months to help you learn the conscious relationship skills to approach your love life and romantic relationships either now or in the future consciously, to help you heal protective patterns and transmute those into expansive connective patterns that actually have you getting what you want in relationships and creating the deeper love, intimacy, and connection you desire, as well as getting clear on what your true wants and needs are in a relationship and having the skills from there to have those needs and desires met, to communicate with your partner, and to create the thriving relationship that you truly need and desire. Once again, you can apply at letitiaringe.com/CRCP. From there, we'll have a conversation together to create a bespoke program that meets you in the current phase of your romantic life right now. All right, my beautiful friends, I will see you in the next episode. Thank you for listening to the Create a Life That Is Beautiful podcast, your go-to resource for personal development and coaching. To deepen your learning and practice, make sure you're subscribed to receive our community newsletter. Subscribe at letitiaringe.com/newsletter. And if you haven't yet left a 5-star review for the podcast, we ask that you please do that now so that this podcast can reach other listeners who also want to join us in creating a life that is beautiful.